Many thanks for staying with us on News Central Television. We are still discussing Angola's election for 2022. Now, this is a closely a neat race between Joao Lourenço, who has been in power for a long time now, and his party has ruled for 5 decades, and a new person, when I say new kid on the block, from the UNITA party, who is Alberto. And we are seeing progress in the elections, and we have our guests to discuss with us now. We had our guests earlier, Claudio Silva and Francisco, who did justice to our questions, but we have a new set of guests right now. We have Edmilson Angelo, a doctoral researcher and expert, Angolan studies from Luanda in Angola. Thank you so much for joining us, Edmilson.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
A pleasure having you. And we also have Chinenye, who is a reporter. She is Nympha Chinenye Nzeribe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right, so like I said earlier, let me start with you, Chinenye. This is a very closely knit election between both parties, and we have seen that people are, gearing towards both parts. We can't exactly tell who is leading, but I would like to ask, now we see that there has been a lot of economic crisis in the country of recent, and two major things that stand out are corruption as well as, the economic challenges that they are facing. Now, we know that Joao Lourenço, when he came into power recently, he tried to curb the corruption a bit. Now, some people will say that is just his way of trying to make people to look towards his direction. But then we see that he questioned the children of the former president and, even questioned their account as regards the topic of corruption. So what do we say about that? Do we say that he really did justice to that in that sphere in his time in power? Or do we say that was just a propaganda, his own agenda to make people to look towards his direction?
Thank you so much. Joao Lourenço has actually, opened up a lot of, political systems, as against his predecessors. So it's a change. It's a continuity, a political continuity that Angolans are generally looking forward to. So it's a policy continuity that Angolans are generally looking forward to. So I think all over, we are all looking forward to the change. Yeah.
Okay, talking about continuity, what do you have to say about that, Edmilson? Edmilson, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Right. So in terms of continuity, obviously, I think never like before did we see our country really teeing up for elections. For us as youth, especially, we have been perhaps trying to expect the promise that were made in the last elections when Lourenço came into power, where he promised 500,000 jobs, where he pretty much was seen as the hero, came to really revolutionize the whole system. But the reality is that the synonym of continuity is perhaps even more debt, is perhaps even more poverty, is perhaps even more corruption. And I think these are the elements that are making people really think twice on how they're going to vote. But I think there's indeed something that we can take away from these elections so far, is the fact that there's so many new elements that perhaps are going to shape politics in Angola for generations to come, whether it's the digital space, whether it's the way in which today we no longer see UNITA as a synonym of war. There's so many elements that are here in this election that I think we have never seen for quite a while. And I think perhaps one of the biggest interesting aspects is the fact that one of Africa's most powerful political system is indeed being put in check by a new generation of voters in Angola. So this is really interesting in terms of our country.
You could say interesting times are here indeed for Angola. But let me go back to Chinenye quickly. Chinenye, I'm sure you've been on the field already and you've taken count of what people are doing, what they're saying, reactions and counter reactions as well. What has it been like concerning voting apathy and not forgetting to registration evaluation? What's it like when you stepped out of that room of yours?
Okay. Yeah, elections have been running. The voting has been running since 7 a.m. and people have been turning en masse. People are really looking forward to what it will turn out. So people have been coming out en masse, and the field is quite safe for voters and the delegates. So there is the police on ground for public order, and the streets are really in high spirits.
quite interesting. What's your take on what did you notice concerning press presence? Not forgetting to the aspect of coverage.
Can I? What did you say?
What did you take note of concerning the presence of the press, members of the press, and international coverage as well?
Okay. Yeah, we are currently at the press center where we had the president, the Commissioner National Electoral Council here in through his spokesperson speak to us, and there are so many journalists on ground. He thanked everybody for turning up, and he assured us that everybody is ready. I mean, the electoral officers are ready for the processes today, and then by 12 noon we'll be getting more information.
Okay, now let me direct my next question to Edmilson. There is a very new and I would say commendable development that has not been seen before, and that is the fact that Angolans in diaspora are now allowed to vote. That is, every Angolan all over the world can now vote for who they want to be the next leader. But people are, although they're excited, there is a challenge, a bit of a challenge, and that's the fact that every vote cast by every Angolan in diaspora is sent to the capital, Luanda, to be counted. And people have fears that this is not going to be a very transparent process. Now, one of our guests earlier said that out of the 14 million registered voters, 2.5 million of those are diseased. That's to say that they are dead. And it kind of, takes it off a bit that there is not so much transparency in the electoral process. So what do we say about that? How do we, classify this? Do we say it's an improvement, or do we say it just makes room for a bit of more shadiness?
Right, that's a very good question indeed. The fact that we still have a very small democracy, obviously all these questions are going to arise. And I think that the fact that for the very first time in the history of the country, we have 12 countries in the diaspora that are going to be able to vote. So we have about 22,000 people that were registered outside of Angola. And I feel like obviously people are questioning whether the votes really matter. But I think one thing that we can notice is that even if it doesn't matter, the fact that people are actually doing it, and all these people in the diaspora are now part of the biggest voice in terms of politics in our country, has really shaped up the way state-citizen relationship in Angola is taking place. I know that there has been a lot of pressure, especially from the opposition party, on the commission, electoral commission, to pretty much disclose and show the list of people going to be voting. And obviously, this question of many people are dead being on the list has been one of the biggest concern in terms of the transparency of the whole process. But in terms of where we aim to be in terms of democracy, I think it's indeed a very big step in including people in the diaspora to vote. And we have to remember that the fact that today, people make majority of the electorate are young people, and all these diaspora who live all these young people that live in the diaspora, they are pretty much maximizing the voice of young people in Angola. And I think this is the reason why it's still very significant, the fact that young people and just Angolans in general in the diaspora will be able to vote. So I think I would definitely say it's a progress, but I think it's still a small one. And obviously, all these questions are going to be answered, I think, by the end of the day today, when we see some sort of signs on how the whole process is taking place, not just in Angola, but also abroad.
All right. Before I come back to you, Edmilson, let me go back to Chinenye as well. Chinenye, can you confirm to us that the population, or all who turned out to register and also to vote at this moment, are true representation of what has been said all the while, particularly youth? What did you see?
Oh yes, the turnout has been really, massive, especially the youth and everybody. Everybody is happy with the way the system is going currently. So youths are really turning out.
What about the older ones? How would you rate the population? 50-50, 40-60, which?
It's 60-40, the youths and the elders.
Okay.
Yeah.
That indeed speaks volume as well. We also saw a footage of the Lorenzo himself preparing to go for the casting. But let's look at one major fact. I'm going to go straight to you, Edmilson. The fact that we could call them the founding fathers, or better still, you could call them the men who indeed stood ahead of time. Jonas Savimbi, who I did ask this question to our last guest, who is no more, of course, and not forgetting to you do have Jose Eduardo dos Santos, whose remains has indeed been repatriated to Angola. Are there any impact these two will have on the current president and, of course, the incumbent?
Right. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think they're still relevant. And it's quite funny because as the years started to move by, people started to go back to the words said by Savimbi. And it seems like everything that he was saying in the late 90s became even more relevant today because it was somebody who had a vision for the country that many people believe is actually reflective of how the country should have been governed for all this time. But it's also the element that the ruling party came into these elections sort of in a position of disadvantage because of everything that has been happening within the whole party in terms of the relationship between the current president and the previous president, the Dos Santos family. So there's everything, there are a lot of things that have been happening within the party that actually has also sort of influenced this whole process. But I think it's not really a matter of old leaders. I think it's a different time. And it's interesting because I think these elections are also going to mark a shift in terms of how the public sees the opposition party, because up until now, the perception of the opposition party really depended on the ruling party. And I think today people no longer see UNITA as a synonym of war, as a synonym of conflict. And this is indeed something that can obviously have a massive impact on future elections. But I really wouldn't say that Dos Santos or Savimbi are perhaps going to have some sort of influence. I really think this is totally different, and I think this is really a new page that is being opened for our country.
Okay, let me stay with you, Edmilson. Let's look at both parties now. We have Lorenzo and we have Alberto. Now, we are looking at Lorenzo as someone who has run before and is eligible to run again, but we don't know now for a fact that he has a track record enough to convince people that he can do it again. He can get rid of corruption and get rid of the economic challenges that they face. On the other hand, we have Alberto, who is appealing to the youth seemingly. And, reason being that he is riding on the fact that they are tired of a corrupt leadership, a leadership that is suffering battling economic problems. So do we say that these parties are confident enough that they can come back or come and redo what they did before? That's talking about Lorenzo now, who has just ruled. Do we say that he's confident enough to redo what he did? And talking about Alberto, do we say that he has what it takes, or he's just mainly trying to take advantage of the fact that people are tired of the incumbent?
Right. That's indeed a crucial question. I feel like in terms of obviously Lorenzo, the fact that when he came into power, the expectation was so high because of everything that he did, whether it was his fight against corruption, whether it was how he was just, governing and making decisions that actually were very appealing for civil society. But the truth of the matter is that after the first and the second years, we started really questioning the fight against corruption. We started questioning many of the decisions of the government. And I feel like many of the promise, and I think this is really where it was the biggest mistake from Lorenzo, is the fact that he never saw the youth as his biggest fiasco. He actually thought that by promising to the youth, this promise wouldn't come back and people wouldn't put pressure on those promises. But the reality of the matter is that people have actually asked for the realization of those promises, and now he has to pay for that. Obviously, there's many things that happened. Obviously, COVID happened, and I think he literally decided to focus more into the health sector, which for me, I think is the sector that has benefited more through the whole process of governance with Lorenzo. But the truth of the matter is that people were just tired, and all these transformations, they have not really been translated into real impact in people's lives. And then there comes a opposition who perhaps sees here the biggest opportunity since the independence, where they realize that we are dealing with a youth that no longer really listens to the way the government puts message in terms of disinformation, in terms of trying to portray an image of the opposition party, and really is a new group of young generation that are really here to let the voices heard. They know that they're the majority, and they know that they have indeed the power to change things in the country now more than ever. And the fact that I feel like the way in which the opposition party sort of adapt to the digital space so quick, that actually made them realize and actually get them more close to young voters. And I think only towards the end of the electoral process, when we started to see the ruling party sort of trying to also embark into this digital space where majority of the youth are today, But the truth of the matter is that this is indeed a vote, and I would say a vote of protest, because people are just tired. People are tired, and obviously it's one of those saying, when you're tired with the people that have been running, you're obviously gonna go with, and indeed, sort of like the enemy, and that's what people have been saying. We are just tired and we want to see new faces. And matter of fact, it's not even a matter of new faces anymore. It's a complete new system, and I think this is how people feel, and it's the solution for many of these people is UNITA, and I think then people are gonna vote for UNITA. But again, like I said, we can never really be sure of the results of these elections, because this is also a youth that we don't know if really they're gonna take everything that have been using in terms of saying how much they're gonna make the voices heard in 2022. We're not sure yet if really they're gonna be expressing themselves the way they've been saying throughout these last 2 years. But the signs are there, and I feel like this is gonna be a sign both for the ruling party, but also for the opposition, that look, this is different. We really want to see people governing and people really delivering rather than just promising.
All right. It seems that there is an indication of people casting votes because they want changes, or because they are tired of seeing the same faces all over again. But let me go to you, Chinenye, quickly. Let's look at the modern use of social media. You've been out there. What are people saying on social media while you were indeed covering this election this morning at the polling units?
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. People have been, commenting on the serenity, especially of this elections and the whole process. So the process is actually going well, and then there are no reasons for people to say any negative things at the moment. So we are still waiting. This is still 10:23, so we are still waiting to see, if there will be any more development. So currently there is calm and serenity in the face of the population, and people are currently happy the way everything is going so far.
All right. You also went out there. Were you also able to see if there were any indications of voting starting very late in some polling units?
Okay, as at the time we stepped out around 7 a.m., people were already voting. People were already voting.
Okay, Chinenye, we also hear that there are more than 80,000 officers or military personnel who are put there. And then they're saying that people will not be allowed to stay around that vicinity after the vote is cast. What's the update on that?
I mean, if that's the situation, then I think the populace should be able to, stay around it. But then, it's something that could be done.
Quite interesting. Well, let me veer off a bit away from the polling unit discussion now. Let me go back to you, Edmilson. Let's look at the current situation, which is indeed begging for answers, especially many have thrown questions up in the air. Edmilson, you are indeed a doctoral researcher and expert in Angolan studies, and I'm sure you are also equally aware of the repatriation of the body of the late Eduardo dos Santos, and it's been stated that he is looking to be buried 4 days after today, which marks the 28th of August. Do you think this current repatriation, the tussle between his wife and the government and so on, will definitely have any impact on the turnout of votes, especially from his party?
Definitely. This is indeed somebody that has ruled our country for decades. And it's important for us to realize that many people who are perhaps the old generation of the ruling party, who's still the biggest voice within the ruling party, were very loyal to Dos Santos, even though they never really spoke in public. But we know that these are people that have been by his side throughout all these generations. But the fact of the matter is that there's a big debate on what's going to happen. There's many people who are actually, against the way in which the government has been treating the repatriation of the body of the former president, Dos Santos. There is indeed one of the biggest voices online right now, the daughters of the ex-president, who have been indeed trying to promote people to vote for the opposition, obviously expressing how mad they are with the whole process of how the body of the father is being treated. Indeed, and the biggest question is, like, for 4 days from election, it's also going to be the anniversary, it would be the birthday of the former president. So people are questioning if it's really necessary for us to bury him on his anniversary, and people are starting to to even put out there that perhaps there's indeed a personal reason why Dos Santos has been treated so bad by the current president. But the truth of the matter is, this is indeed going to be something that we're going to have to follow very close, because this is something that going to have leaders of other countries coming to Angola, and we still having to understand, we still have to decide if we're going to do it in the process of counting the votes, because obviously I don't think leaders of other nations are going to be going to Angola through this process. But there's indeed some leaders that have already confirmed the presence. We had the president of Portugal who said that he's going to come for the ceremony. But this is one of the biggest questions right now, and we're definitely going to get answers perhaps by the next 2 days or the next day.
All right, Edmilson, now there are growing concerns that we cannot guarantee a free and fair election because the Electoral Commission is still governed by the MPLA. Can you walk us through that? What do you have to say about that?
Right. So this is indeed one of the biggest questions that people have been putting forward. People, soon after we saw the election of the commissioner for the CNE, which is the National Electoral Commission, is somebody that is known for being involved in many scandals of corruption, in many scandals of election rig. And I feel like the fact that we had somebody that is very questionable leading the whole process in terms of the Electoral Commission, this is something that the opposition has been very vocal about it. The public, civil society has been very vocal about it. And we are literally waiting to see the process of counting the votes, because I think this is really where we'll get a chance to realize how much there's truth to the whole process, or in which part of the country there has been perhaps fishy results. And obviously, like I said, I think especially in urban areas, there's an element that if the opposition party doesn't win, at least they're going to have to increase the seats in terms of the parliament. I think that's the only result that people are going to perhaps accept it in the urban areas like Luanda. But the truth of the matter is that there's indeed many questions, because the reputation of the people who are leading these institutions is extremely bad. And obviously, these are people that are also well connected with the ruling party. So this is why these questions are there. But again, this is a totally different reality, because now we have spaces where people have been resisting the power of the system, spaces where people have been indeed trying to create a sort of relationship of checks and balance with the government. And obviously, these spaces are in the digital space, such as Facebook and Instagram, that are indeed sort of shaping up the way the whole process is actually taking place.
All right, before I come back to you, let me also go back to Chinenye. Chinenye, looking at the polling units, of course, you do have not just two political parties, by the way. So what's happening to the others?
Okay, so the fight currently is between two main opposition parties, but I mean, we are still waiting to get more information about what is really going on. But I mean, it's been between these two, so we are still waiting.
All right, still waiting for the other two. Let me pose that question quickly to you before I ask other questions, Edmilson. We don't have just two political parties, do we, in Angola?
7 political parties and 1 coalition. Obviously, many of the people who are leading these political parties are people that are familiar within the space of politics in Angola, former members of UNITA, obviously, and indeed, people are not really looking at these political parties as options, because I think the main focus here is obviously MPLA and UNITA. And I think even the people who are actually used to have power to mobilize more people, they have joined UNITA. We're talking about people such as Ashivo Kufuku, who was somebody that was member of UNITA, and then he created his own party that is also running for election today. But it's also another interesting element. There's actually another opposition party, which is the coalition Casa CE, that has become perhaps the favor in terms of the system. They are turning to be the oppositional hugs and kisses with the system. And I think they are actually going to be perhaps the opposition party besides UNITA, who are also going to be out there for us to look and see how they're going to do in these elections. But indeed, like I said, there's more options. But indeed, even though there's more options, yet the choices for the people are very limited. And I think this is also something that needs to change.
All right, Mr. Angelo, if you look at the reforms and the list, what are the top 3 that the youths are actually prioritizing, and it should be the go-to when you do have a new leader, if that will be the case?
Is that question for me?
Yes, absolutely, for you.
Thank you, sir. So basically, in terms of that, and it's important for us to actually touch on this point. These elections have been extremely polarized, and there's one thing that we actually missed a lot was actually having leaders talking about how they're going to really govern the country for the next 5 years. That's why people are begging for a debate between the two main political parties for us to really understand what is it that they're going to do for Angola for the next 5 years. But in terms of the youth, I think it's clear the youth needs jobs. This is one of the biggest questions, and it has perhaps been the biggest fiasco of the son of Lorenzo, because when he came into power, he promised 500,000 jobs for the youth. And I think this is the reason why people are really extremely mad at the way it has been not delivering these promises. But obviously, in terms of the youth, it's indeed the provision of jobs, is obviously education. And I think indeed, in terms of how the youth is right now, I would definitely say is also in terms of housing. So this is something that many young people who account for the majorities, they're still living with the parents because the country doesn't offer the capacity and the conditions for you as young people to start your own life with a dignified job and perhaps create your own family. So I think these are the three elements in terms of the youth, which is employment, education, and housing. And obviously there's other ones such as health and so on and so forth. And this is also actually very interesting, and it's not just about the youth. I think this is perhaps the elections where we are getting to hear the same thing throughout different generations. I think this is not no longer an election of generations where you have the older generation saying, no, we need to vote for continuation because of the war. No, this is actually where you can see even older generations saying, now we are actually going through a difficult time. And I think we need to start reconsider how we govern our country. Whether you are UNITA or MPLA, we need to reconsider how we lead our country.
All right, Edmilson, there is still a very crucial question I would like to ask before I go to Chinenye. There has been this bridge, or would I say bias, between the haves and the have-not, or have-nots in Angola, and that has still yet to balance. So do you think that any of these major candidates who are vying for this office have the power to bring balance to bridge that gap between the major, the problem in Angola?
I think the sign is there, and it's clear for everyone that intends to govern Angola now. There is indeed pressure. I think the youth is going to put pressure regardless of who wins these elections. And I think obviously if we listen to the words of Lorenzo, who has been trying to emphasize how much they did since the COVID, how much infrastructure is there, how they have actually improved the economy. They have been, saying how much they can do if they have, another opportunity to deliver. But again, we also have the opposition who's saying, you know what, we are bringing people from different parts of civil society. We are bringing other leaders of opposition parties. We want to create here a system of inclusion where we can obviously rule the country with more experience and with the contribution of everybody. So I feel like these two parties in particular, obviously they are aware that they will have to deliver, whether they like it or not, because I don't think the youth is going to give second chances as much as they used to have before, when the youth didn't account for the majority of the population. So I definitely see here between these two political parties, I see indeed people besides the leadership, because obviously we tend to focus only on the leaders, but obviously we also have to remind ourselves that there's actually a whole structure behind these leaders. And when you look at the MPLA, we have got the inclusion of many females. We have got, for the first time, an indication of somebody who, if the MPLA wins, will become the first female vice president of the country. We have got a lot of inclusion in terms of gender equality, in terms of the ruling party. And obviously, in terms of UNITA, we have experience. We have people from different parties who are here trying to also contribute to how the country is going to be governed. So I'll definitely say that there are good signs. Besides the leadership, there's also people there that can deliver. But obviously, it's all going to come down to how the youth sees if they're going to deliver or not.
All right, thank you for that, Edmilson. Now, let me go to Chinenye. There's something we keep reiterating, and that's the fact that the majority of the population and majority of the registered voters are youth. Now, these are the generation that did not exactly experience the war as at 20 years ago. These are people who were born either during or after the war, so they didn't exactly feel the impact. So would you say that they are passionate enough to want that change?
Yeah, I think they are passionate enough to change. I mean, they're all looking forward to what is to come out of the current elections. So change is something that no matter the country you're in, I think each has its own.
Unfortunately, I don't think we can hear you clearly any longer, Chinenye. We'll wait for you to work your stuff and try to get the audio working once more. Let's go straight to that question that many have actually highlighted in the course of this entire election, pre-campaigns, campaigns, and the likes, you name it. I'm going to go straight to you again, Angelo. Let's look at the fact that Angola is indeed having a lot of debt to deal with. And it's been said that Lorenzo has done pretty much well in helping Angola to clear its debt. What's your take on that? Don't you think continuity will possibly put Angola in the balance, seeing Angola free of debt?
Again, and that's right. He has indeed done pretty well in terms of economy. I think this is indeed one side of his work that people can not take away from him. I feel like the fact that they indicated a Minister of Finance that has become perhaps one of the biggest references in the country. I'm talking about the young lady, Vera Doubs, who has made many decisions that have perhaps positioned the country in a position to go and get more finance. And it's important for us to mention here that what Lorenzo found was not easy as well. He found gaps within the whole system and had to work with all these deficits that were left by the previous government. But of course, we managed to balance our relationship, our debt with China. We sort of like took away some of the power that China has in our economy and has involved, it has opened up the country in a way that many people, in terms of Western investors, have actually been looking at the country as perhaps a destination to invest. There has been signs of positive growth in terms of the economy. And I think today, when you look at the value of the kwanza, it reflects all these decisions that the government made. But again, I think the fact that all these changes has not really been sort of like felt in everyday life, this is something that has been very difficult for civil society to accept and to understand. And then obviously, like I said, all these terminologies, when it comes to real life changes, it's very difficult for people to understand it. They just want to have the power to buy the things that they need on day-to-day basis. But the reality is that for us to find that balance, we had to put in many measures that actually had direct impact on people's life. So this is the reason why I feel like in terms of economy, this is indeed a good element of Lorenzo's mandate. And again, people just want to feel on how that affects or how that has impact on everyday life. And this is actually something that Lorenzo has been proclaiming a lot. He has been talking about the economy. He has been showing cases how the opinion of different countries on how Angola is doing in terms of economy. But unless that transform or translate into everyday changes in people's lives, people are still going to be questioning. And obviously, this is also very interesting because I feel like in the previous elections, especially since 2002 when China came into Angola, this is perhaps the election where we had less Chinese involvement. When I mean less Chinese involvement, is that it's not like we see the government going out to China to try and get money to build things in last minute so that they can win votes. So this is actually very interesting indeed. We didn't really see much of Chinese involvement throughout this election, and it's something that we can also perhaps analyze later on.
All right, Edmilson, looking at the statistics before now, we see that Lorenzo's party has a majority, of course, and we also see that the UNITA is now forming an informal coalition with a Unity party, a civil society group, and activists to broaden their appeal. Do you think that this will work?
Yes, definitely. I feel like, and this is the reason why perhaps this idea of this coalition that we're about to happen between UNITA and other parties was rejected by the judiciary. I think it's because of they notice how much power these coalitions could have, and these are big names within the political space in Angola. These are people that people really respect, and I feel like if this was formally created, would indeed have even more pressure on the government. And again, but that did not stop them from coming together and actually rally together for these elections. And obviously, these are people that have now been indicated to be part of the UNITA group in terms of the parliament. And I think, like I said, within urban areas, the least that we can expect is at least for UNITA to sort of like enlarge its seats in the parliament, because people over there, they are extremely tired of the ruling party, MPLA. But again, from the other side is also the other element which I spoke just now, is the fact that MPLA has invested into women inclusion a lot. And even if the MPLA wins, we're also going to have for the first time the president of the assembly being a woman. So this is also an element that is going to be very interesting for us to see if the MPLA wins or if UNITA wins as well.
Well, that's another one, talking about women inclusion and the strategies and the plan. Well, let's take one last question for you, Chinenye, before we let you go. What are the plans, especially for coverage of this election, especially looking at the numbers of turnout of persons, press, and not forgetting the public? What are the expectations?
Okay, there are a lot of journalists on ground, there are a lot of pressmen on ground, so it's expected that there will be a lot of coverages at all polling units in Rwanda and Angola in general. So we are still waiting to get more reports on the elections.
All right. Thank you so much, Chinenye, for joining us. We look forward to have you later on in the course of communication and looking to see what the results will look like, especially when the voting is indeed done. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, let's still go back to you. You're still here with us, Edmilson. Let's look at the recent election that was held in Africa as well, within the same continent. We're talking about Kenya. Are there any thoughts in your research that this could have an impact on what is going on right now in your country?
Right, definitely. I feel like this is indeed something that can obviously have impact, not just in terms of the region, but also in terms of the continent as a whole, because we talk about countries that have massive influence on how we as Africans see ourselves developing. We look at the Kenya elections where we had obviously the opposition party trying to fight for the results and trying to, proclaim not accepting the results. We also we were waiting to see after the results in Angola come out whether how would be the position of the party. And it's interesting also because the question also comes, in case of a loss from UNITA, how would it be this unity of different parties? Would they break up? Would they continue to be together? Would they actually be even stronger to try and change and put more pressure on the government through the assembly? So I feel like indeed this is something that people have been watching, the outcome of the elections in Kenya. And I think even for political parties, they have keeping an eye on how the outcome of the elections took place in Kenya. And obviously, I feel like this is going to be sort of like a domino effect, because obviously had Kenya with Angola and then we're also going to be waiting for Nigeria. So I think like it's important for us to only look at this as a one election only. I feel this is going to be indeed something that is going to have a massive impact from the region level, but also from the continental level. And all changes and all themes that perhaps connect one election with another, whether it's the youth, whether it's digital space, where there's opposition party becoming more stronger, all these little things we're gonna try and connect and perhaps come up with a bigger or a continental analysis of elections in the current elections in Africa.
Most definitely, it's going to have a lot of impact on the continent. Now, talk to us, Edmilson. The last time things were this tight in the election in Angola was in 1992 between the ruling party and the UNITA. Then was a rebel group, if I'm not mistaken, and it was led by Jonas Savimbi. So what do we say can be done differently to avoid, because that tightness and the inability to conclude led to the long-standing civil war. So what can we say we can do or can be done differently to avoid such repetition?
Right, that's indeed right. I feel like this is indeed, and many people have been calling this perhaps the real second great elections of Angola, because I feel like if we had to look at the previous elections, this is the only one where we can perhaps see signs of the similarities with the current elections today. Perhaps it's the one in 1992, where it was really tight, and obviously it was the elections that came in the process of independence, which was a chaos in Angola. And then right after the results, we embarked into a civil war that destroyed our country for many years. But the reality of the matter is that this is different. This is different, obviously. I feel like people in this time, and this is actually one thing that I also have to say about the 1992 election, the 2022 election, is the fact that we have literally gone back to the times where you can either be A or B. There's no middle term. And I feel like this is something that was quite similarity in terms of these two elections. But I think it's totally different because people are not really looking at the narrative of war anymore. And we saw that with the whole campaign where some parties were trying to use this narrative to sort of like ruin the image of the opposition party. And sometimes even the opposition party going back to this idea of no, but the war was not made just by one person. And even other parties saying that Angolans are now tired of two parties that have created a lot of disruption in the country. So this narrative did not really work in Angola because people are not really trying to look at the past, And for us as young people that have no reflection of the war, and our reference today is pretty much the times where the country was at the peak of the economy versus the times where we are today, where the reality of the majority is indeed in a dire situation. And I feel like today it's difficult for us to say that something might happen in case of the results that people are not expecting, because the reality of the matter is that whether the ruling party wins or not, the fact of the matter is that never like before we see this system being put on check by a young generation that has perhaps realized how powerful they are in order to change the way state-state relationship has been operating in Angola. So obviously the measures are there. We had the police that are there to make sure that nothing happens. And I think more than the police is also sort of like a growth within our behavior in terms of elections, because obviously this is the fifth elections, and we as young people who are perhaps the biggest voice for these elections, we are aware that we don't want war. We just want our voices to be heard. We just want things to change for the better. And we actually want people to realize that we are now more than ever hungry for development and progress.
Okay, now, Edmilson, we are seeing an unexpected but definitely not unprovoked rise in the number of support that UNITA has garnered over time. Now, we see that it rose from 13% in 2019 to over 20% as of now. What would you say triggered this level of support?
Right. The first thing is the fact that actually everything that the ruling party did not do actually made UNITA more stronger. And everything that was created against the opposition party, it worked in favor of the opposition party. Whether it was the disinformation, the propaganda against the lead of the opposition, there were so many things that came up, and it sort of became sort of like a bullying from the ruling party towards the lead of the opposition, Adalberto Costa Jr., where people started to sympathize a lot with him. But I feel like these elections, even though we have put a lot of emphasis into UNITA, I feel like UNITA is actually a consequence of, it's like a result of how youth has actually been seeing the ruling party. This is more to do with the youth who in terms of trying to pass the message to the ruling party, they have found UNITA as perhaps the way for them to put a message to the ruling party that this is what we want, this is the change that we want, and this is why many people see these elections as voting or protest, because people have enough of the ruling party. And obviously, when you have to look at the options that are out there to perhaps change these, UNITA is indeed in favor for the options for the civil society. So yes, we definitely have that element of how much what the ruling party did not do actually caused an effect on how much UNITA could actually point fingers towards them. But also is the digital space, which I think is extremely important. I think these elections are going to be indeed the solidification of the digital space in Angolan's politics, because never like before do we see the power of social media. Social media has become not just a space of participation, but also a space of resistance against the government. And this is the reason why today people believe that things will never be the same regardless of the outcome, because youth have now found a way for them to express their voice in a way that is safer for them, but is also very effective for them. And obviously, UNITA has embarked into this digital space very early indeed. And they sort of became and started to speak the language of the youth, whether through memes, whether through hashtags. They started to speak the voices of the youth. Instead, on the other side, the opposition party, and I feel like this is something that actually worked against the opposition, the ruling party, they took a little bit of time and they become a little bit too slow in adapt to the digital space. And so they were only using the traditional media such as television, radio, and that is no longer enough for you to convince people to vote for you. And I think this is pretty much what has put UNITA in the position where they are, is the fact that they had been bullied, and therefore people have become to sort of build a sympathy towards the opposition party and mainly its leader. And then they managed to speak the voice of the youth through the digital space, and obviously they made this thing that allow us to see them as perhaps as options, such as including people from other parties and civil society. And obviously now we just have to wait and see how this is going to turn out.
Well, talking of social media and highlighting its impact on this ongoing election, well, on Twitter there, it's being said that chants could be heard across when Joe Lorenzo's arrival indeed happened at the polling station. They were saying, Jesus is coming back. I wonder what they mean by that. But many have also said that there's not enough support concerning this election, especially because Angola, Cape Verde, and like the other, were colonized by the Portuguese. But let's find out what the data room has to say. We do have joining us Bernard Akide, and of course we do have Shewa Odushoga. They will be taking a look at what the data is saying, following what we just got on social media as well, that there isn't enough support on this election. And I'm sure you yourself, Edmilson, will shed more light on this. Hi, Bernard.
Bom dia e bem-vindo ao Central Television.
Oh,
exactly, right?
How many times did you practice that, if I may ask?
I'm still practicing it in my head. If you want to know, it's still going on in my head. So for those who don't understand what I just said, that's basically saying good morning. You are watching New Central Television, and that's in Portuguese, which is the official language.
Hold on. Let Edmilson clear that. Did he get that, Edmilson?
He did indeed. Very well indeed. You are ready to go to Angola.
Edmilson, my next ticket to Angola is on you, by the way. All right, a very good morning, ladies, gentlemen, everybody across the continent and, of course, across the world. Shewa, good morning to you too.
Hello, good morning, Africa, and good morning, Angola, as you decide who becomes the next president in 2022.
In 2022, definitely. Now, we'll quickly be looking at some statistics like Joe and Blessings have mentioned concerning this year's elections. We'll also compare them to, what we had from the last election in 2017. Now, to start with, we see that Angola's election, and that's it on the screen there, the United Nations estimates the population of Angola as at the 1st of July 2022 to be about 35,588,987 people. Now, of this number, we have 14.3 million Angolan voters who are registered to take part in this election. Well, some have complained that this is not enough persons to take part in the election, and it's a particular complaint we've seen across the continent in different elections that we've seen so far this year.
All right, so adding to that, I'd like to say that of the 14 million registered voters will be voting across 13,000 polling stations and then 26,000 polling units across the country. We've also seen that there's a little bit of improvements in the level of voters turnout that we have this year compared to what we have in 2017.
Yeah.
Now let's look at what the breakdown of figures in 2017. We have the total registered voters for 2017 election is just about 9,317,294, and then for the invalid blank vote we have 275,000, and then total vote you see here that was what total vote cast is at 7 million. So we see that we have more voters turn out for the 2022 election. We do not know what likely could be, contributing to the large voter turnout.
Well, I think basically it's about Angolas, and particularly young Angolas, wanting to make a change. Now, like Blessings and Joe have mentioned earlier, there's been one party that has been in power for like about 4 decades or more. And in any country, definitely, no matter how good that party is doing or how well the party is doing, at some point people will clamor for a change. And I think that's exactly what's beginning to play out in Angola. Of course, going with the fact that, like many other African countries, Angola is bedeviled by certain issues, particularly when it comes to, and you and I mentioned this earlier, talking about economic instability, talking about youth unemployment. So the clamor for change. We've heard that word several times in different parts of the world recently.
So it looks like we are in a change era, especially as Africa is concerned. We see like the same turnout as witnessed in the Kenya elections. People want, although Kenya is a little bit twisted with, the deputy president now coming out withdrawing from his principal and then contesting against who the principal is supporting. But we see that in the case of Angola, the youth who contribute to the larger part of the population are saying that, the figures say that we have 30% unemployment rate in Angola, and that the youth are saying that they need to also be part of the labor market to be able to afford the basic needs. There's also the case of lack access to electricity, lack access to, water and the likes. And then the country can also say that it's also dealing with the level of poverty rates in the country. So this way, I think that the UNITA candidate is trying to clamor for more votes amongst the youth to see that, I've come to bring change. So let's have a change from the four decades MPLA in power.
will, yeah. I'm going to throw this to Edmilson, who is still our guest on standby. Edmilson, now change is something that almost every African country who's going to, going to the polls is asking for, or African countries are asking for. What kind of change exactly are young Angolans asking for? We're putting young Angolans in perspective now, because basically they are the ones saying we want something different from what the MPLA has been giving us. So what kind of change are young Angolans looking for?
Right. So I think Angolans and the youth in particular, they reflect the youth from everywhere else. It's a youth that doesn't really ask for much. They just want the opportunities for them to be able to have a life of dignity, a life where they can perhaps have prosperity. And I feel like for countries like Angola, that is extremely rich in terms of natural resources, the expectations are always high. And we have to remember that this is a youth that perhaps they don't have the idea of what it's like to really work for things, because we were used to having things so easily, because we saw our country having such a transformation that many people call it a fairy tale story, where we came out of war and then we just became one of the biggest of the richest countries in Africa. We were living like we're perhaps, first line world, or first line country, where many youth thought they could be wearing Louis Vuittons and Gucci because the country was just flying in money. But the reality of the matter is that all this prosperity that was deemed to be our reality right after the Civil War did not reflect the majority of the people. It was only a very close amount of people that actually saw the prosperity of the oil boom here in Angola. And the youth obviously felt that. So for many of these people, it's just the fact that all this promise of housings, all this promise of jobs, all this promise of a better education, they're not feeling it. And I feel like they're not asking for much, because they know that when the country or when the system really wants to deliver, they deliver. And I think throughout the last month, we saw many things being done, and that indeed had a different element or a different impact than previous elections, where, you'd wait until the last year for you to make things happen and maybe you would win the votes. People are like, no, don't show us now, because we've been asking for this for years. So whatever you do now doesn't really count anymore, because we don't care. So this is why I think for the Angolan youth, they really want, especially in terms of jobs, they want the country to be moving in a direction where people can have access to jobs, people can have access to education, people can have access to healthcare, people can have sort of like certainties, because obviously in Angola, we are in a process where the only certainty is uncertainty. And I think this is very difficult for young people who they know that this is a year where we have to be producing for our country. And we are seeing a whole generation of losing the youth years just by doing nothing, And I think that's extremely dangerous for the country. And perhaps this is also a sign of how much the youth is here to really change things and let people know that you're not going to be wasting our youth years just like that.
Thank you so much, Edmilson. Now, talking about not wasting their youthful years, let's bring you back to the statistics from the 2017 elections. Now, Shewa, you can definitely see why the youth are asking for change. Let's go back to the previous slide that we just saw right now. Why the youth are asking for change, rather. Now, in 2017 elections, you can see the gulf of difference between each party. And I'd let you go through that, Shewa, now.
All right, so for the MPLA party, that's the ruling party as we have it now, and then the man who is also seeking a re-election, the 65-year-old man, has about 61% votes. That's a landslide, and the UNITA has come in with 26.7%. But we hope to see a change in the figures, because we know that UNITA has now come with different civil society groups forming a merger to convert for more votes for the party, and then. We do not know the faith of all of the rest of the parties. We have the KASASI, the PRS, FNLA, and the APN.
Not many votes. I'll throw this back to Edmilson. Now, Edmilson, from what we have on the screen here, definitely 2017 election, like Shewa said, it was a landslide. Now the youth are clamoring for change, like we mentioned earlier. Do you think that this gap will be breached? Do you think that the distance between these two parties will be shorter, or do you even possibly think that the scripts will be flipped come these elections? Especially now that we have more people interested in the vote, and we have, I think, more voter apathy in this 2022 election.
Indeed, and this is perhaps the key element of these elections. We cannot tell for sure whether this is going to be the same, because the signs are there that something is going to change. And like I said previously, if you look at the biggest electoral camps, such as Luanda, one thing is for sure, I feel like in places like that, where we know that there's a young generation of voters, who actually accounts for the majority of the population, there is indeed a chance, a very big chance for UNITA to overtake within these constituencies such as Rwanda. And that would then would translate into UNITA having more seats within the assembly, within the parliament. And I feel like this is perhaps going to be a result that people are going to take it easily. If UNITA doesn't win, at least they have to increase the seats within the assembly. I think this is something that people are going to take it easily. But I feel like, and then we can see in this table that you guys are showing, this graph, obviously some names that are there, they were not there in 2017, especially like the opposition leader, Adalbert Costa Jr. He was not there in 2017. He was our old leader, and we have more parties that are now have emerged. But the reality of the matter is that this gap, now more than ever, if there's a chance for this gap to be sort of like shortened or even change, this is the election that we're definitely gonna get that. And I feel like if we have to use a barometer to analyze or to see whether this is gonna happen or not, we're gonna have obviously to look at the whole process throughout the last 5 years. And there's enough signs that UNITA is definitely gonna get more votes. And obviously, now we just have to really try and wait and see how the ruling party is going, how the ruling party will do, because that's, for me, is the biggest question. Which constituencies they're going to take hold of it? If they lose urban areas like Luanda, would that mean that perhaps now people are going to have more focus beyond the urban areas, and perhaps Angola, that is a country of 18 provinces, going to have more focus on other provinces as well? So it's going to be extremely interesting for the country, and I feel like these numbers are definitely going to be different this time around. We just have to see whether it's going to be a tight race or it's going to be a completely new change. So this is something that we're going to be getting a grip of it in the next hours, I feel.
All right, definitely getting a grip. And there's something you mentioned, that Edmilson mentioned, he talked about increasing the seats, other parties having to increase the seats. Now, in the next slide, you will see what the seats look like, what the number of seats look like, and which party is taking which number of seats. And you see why Edmilson is saying that we need that other parties will need to increase the number of seats. Now, this is what it looks like 2022.
That's for the National Assembly.
For the National Assembly, exactly. Now, you can see that MPLA, the ruling party, has 150 seats. Closest to MPLA is the UNITA party, and all they have is 51 seats. And then you have, of course, other parties with 16, 2, and 1. And this all together make up the 220 seats in the National Assembly. So clearly, for proper representation, like he was saying, we would have to see more party members from the other parties take up more seats if, of course, they want a better representation in government.
So another thing is that despite the fact that MPLA has 150 seats, one notable thing is that the party actually lost 25 seats in the National Assembly for the 2017 election, but it was still able to regain the supermajority position with 150 seats. We wait to see what UNITA is going to prove this time, maybe getting more seats in the National Assembly to determine more representation of the party. So if, fingers crossed, the party loses this election, we know that they were able to make a statement by getting more seats at the National Assembly.
Definitely. And just before we, we leave our little box here, Joe and the blessings, there's one interesting thing that is going on in Angola. We saw part of it in Kenya, and we're hoping it will spread to other parts of Africa, and that is voting in diaspora. Now, we were able to understand that Angolans in certain countries, I believe in Cuba, I saw a report that a few Angolans in Cuba will be able to vote from there. I know that Cuba is also a Portuguese-speaking country. And I saw something about Namibia as well early this morning, if I'm not mistaken. What kind of effect do you think that this would have on the general elections, if at all it will have any?
I know that you're learning Portuguese, so you'll be able to travel to many different countries. Portuguese won't be able to go to Cuba. You're going to have
Portuguese
to
is growing.
To go to Cuba. But obviously, all these countries that have a very special relationship with Angola, whether it's Cuba that has been a massive partner of our history in terms of our liberation conflict, they have a lot of people that are a lot of Angolans that live in this country. So have countries like Cuba, Congo, Namibia. In terms of Europe, we have Portugal, where we have the biggest community of Angola in the diaspora. We have got the UK, we have got France. So all these countries, there are 12 countries that have been selected for us to start this expansion of inclusion in terms of the diaspora voting in the general elections. And obviously, this is also something new, and like I said, even though many people in the diaspora feel like the votes doesn't matter, the truth of the matter is that all these people are now becoming part of a bigger conversation about politics in Angola, and they are helping to maximize the voices of the youth because they are highly involved within the digital space as well. So these indeed, even though many people might see it like it doesn't matter, indeed has an impact when it comes to politics here at home. So this is the reason why I feel like this process, and indeed we have to give credit to Lorenzo, because he has taken decisions that are hard, for somebody that is under pressure, and indeed has opened the space for us to have perhaps a more open democracy that is still young, but all these positive signs are indeed ways for us to perhaps build a more solidified democracy. And perhaps I think this is something that we have to be very proud of as a country, to be able to allow people in the diaspora to participate in this party of democracy.
Okay, and this is where I say obrigado, still continuing my Portuguese.
De nada. Now you're right.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, Shewa, well, basically, for now, this is the statistics that we have, and I know that as the voting continues, as the election continues, we definitely will be getting more statistics and more analysis, hoping that the election will be peaceful.
Also, I would also like to add one thing. Now that we have the shift of having the youth being the major decider for elections, I see, Nigeria's election is next year. We see the level of participation that the youth is having and the level of relevance they are having to say that this is what we want, this is who we want, what are the things that we want from this government. We also saw that happen in Kenya, deciding, okay, this is how we want the country to go by moving ahead. But one thing that we need to also put into consideration is youth participation in politics. It should not always be at the other side of support or for deciding the vote. They should also be part of the decision-making process of the country. And I hope Angolans are going to take this into consideration.
Definitely, we do hope Angolans will take this into consideration. Joe, blessings. Again, in my own Portuguese, and of course, Edmilson, obrigado. We definitely will be back here again to give you more statistical analysis of the ongoing election.
Thank you, Bernard. Enough of that already. Thank you so much, Bernard and Adeshewa.
I wonder what Bernard's plans are.
I really do.
If you have plans to JAPA, I mean, for
don't
you,
worry. In December, you will see me lounging on a Portuguese beach.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Bernard. Thank you so much, Shewa, as well, for that data analysis as well. Like it said, we'll look forward to have more information concerning the data and what is to come. In the meantime, we want to say thank you so much, Edmilson, Angelo, for joining us. You've been a wonderful one being here with us, and thank you so much for those analysis as well.
Thank you so much, Edmilson. And Joe, before you go ahead, this voting in diaspora is really a very welcome development. If only we are ready for that conversation, and if we're fully ready to implement that, it really will be effective, but it has to be transparent all through.
That's another one. That's what people need to look out for. But in the meantime, it's still ongoing. We're bringing to you live updates and keeping you informed with the current state of report ongoing at Angola, as different polling units are indeed starting to cast. But not just that, there are also things that people are raising on social media and some of the conversations that we have had here. But without further ado, we'll take a look at the fact that everyone is indeed getting ready and gearing up to see if change will indeed come. The question is, will it come now or will it come later on? Well, two main parties are at loggerheads, and the questions are indeed raised. Who will be able to take them to the promised land, who wouldn't, and the possibilities of having a continuation of what has always been, even from independence. Blessings has our own take on what is ongoing. So far so good. We've spoken to a few people and we've gotten their points as well. Your take?
We definitely have. And we have seen that the youth are really interested. I mean, for the first time in a very long time, since independence, we have more youth who are voting. And it really is a very good development. We see that they are now very, very interested in the politics of their country. And that's to say that they want the change that they're looking for. I mean, it's unheard of that a very rich country is suffering unemployment and economic challenges. So let's hopefully see that these things change and hopefully there is a transformation. But before we go further, we go on a very short break and we'll be right back to discuss Angola's election 2022.
Posição e depois Catalina, conhece? Costa.
Não, vai sacar já.
We're Africa Live, and definitely we are here bringing you live reports, most definitely on what's happening in Angola. It's Angola Decides 2022 And this live broadcast has indeed touched on so many happenings. If you just tuned in, we're saying welcome. But hey, you haven't missed much, but you've missed a bit. Let's put it that
You
way.
definitely have missed a bit. And talking about voting in diaspora, we see that 12 countries are involved, and we have seen Namibia casting their votes. Now, a lot of Angolans are very excited at this new development, and it really is an amazing and welcome development, seeing how people all over the world from Angola can now be a part of the decision-making process of their country. So like I said earlier, there is a footage of Namibia, people in Namibia, Angolans in Namibia casting their votes, and excited Angolans, so to say. So vote casting is now a thing for everyone who is from Angola, but all around the world, and it is really a welcome development.
That's it. As you can see, there are scenes from Windhoek in Namibia, and you do have Angolans who do have a space for them to indeed cast their votes. But without further ado, let's quickly take a look at some of the latest reports. 80,000 policemen have been deployed on the streets of Angola to ensure there is sanity and safety. Looking at the past story and happenings when it comes to these two major parties. We're talking about UNITA and not forgetting to the all-important MPLA. Well, we do have another guest who's joining us for this hour as we talk through what is the outcome and what could possibly be the outcome and the recent happenings as it unfolds. We will have joining us local government and public policies analyst from Angola, Luanda in particular, Osvaldo Joao. Thank you so much for being here with us, and good morning to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning.
Good morning
So
to you,
it's a pleasure
Osvaldo.
to be here with you, and all right, thank you once again.
All right, Osvaldo, let me start off first by asking you, have you been outside there? Have you been out there? Have you taken a look at what's happening within your neighborhood?
Yeah, just now. I mean, let's say like 15 minutes ago, ago, was just like, checking around and everything. Was talking to the cops and kind of just trying to figure out what's going on, if the streets are being calm the way they wanted to, like what exactly is going on. And It just gave me a message and everything, and I came back.
All right. So you just did a little pip here and there to find out what's happening. You talked about the police. Let's start off with security as we have this discussion. Now, 80,000 policemen. What could have been the reason why you have so much policemen on the streets? We do know there might be fears of this escalating to violence or whatsoever, but 80,000? Your thoughts?
I mean, is a fact. Is a fact. There was the number, the government, just deliberate in order just to maintain the election for this that is happening today, actually. But there is a reason behind that. Taking in consideration the fact that we have experienced, how can I say, some way, of attack concerning the level of security past the election had. I think there was a smart thinking in order to just put all these numbers of, people in order to ensure that the election goes in a very peaceful way. And I believe is also a security measure that can also make people feel free, because sometimes when we are on election process, like some people wearing T-shirts from other political parties are cannot pass to another street because of this kind of, conflict and everything. They tend to do things like fight or get into some arguments that indirectly or directly lead to this kind of fight. So this number can just be a way of just ensure that this kind of situation and conflict doesn't happen, not just around place people are going to vote, but even in the street, on the road and everything, they can pass, because at the end of the day, it's election, but we want everyone to be free and safe around the country.
All right, that really is a good development and a great initiative, if I must say. Now, let's talk about the younger generation. We see that despite the fact that there are 60% of the population being the youth, we also see that the presidential candidates are, very old, slightly older than what we know as the younger generation. So where does that leave the younger people? Like they always say, the future of tomorrow. So where does that leave the young generation?
Okay, what I would like to say is that when they mean young generation, they're basically talking about the human capital. I mean, the power of a country, belongs to the youth, or we can find it easily in the youth. So when they mean young generation, they're just trying to let us know that we are people that is going to lead this country in the future. So we need more attention. We need more taking care in all aspects. This is what is difficult for most African countries in order to provide this kind of goodness to their citizens. So with us, it's not different. We have a president that when we mean young, we're trying to say that someone can understand our needs. In a very, basically, because to understand a young, you need to be young, not necessarily, but most of the cases like that, because their generation, comparing their ages are different. The way one sees life and all this, diplomatic situation, it tends to be different than the other one. So the younger president we have in one of our political parties is someone that people feel that they can easily understand what we're going through, what we need, because the youth are dying. We are facing, many things that should be, not our problem, so I can say, but we're still facing situations like that. But as every way is like that, I'm just saying that I believe that the younger president is in a condition to understand better what's going on, with the youth of Angola comparing to the other one. And even if he is like that, I believe that we need to have someone who can answer our questions directly in a short period of time, because the time is now. This is what the society is climbing. The time is now, and we need to see changes now. And this is exactly what's going on.
All right, Osvaldo, let's revisit the security situation. Now, so far, everything has been put in place and things are going smoothly, but is there a reason to fret?
Sorry?
Is there a reason to be scared looking at how things are going?
Okay, there is no reason to be scared, but when we're talking about government elections and how the government works itself, you need to, as a local government analyst, I can say that when we look at the government structure itself, there is a way that say that population needs to be secured. Is the obligation in order to provide better condition to secure the population under those kind of circumstances. So we face an election is a moment of peace, love, hunger too. So we need to understand that all conditions need to be in place, is either needed or not when it comes to this kind of, measure of security. Reason why I believe that was smart, because once again, as African, we tend to fight quick. Less patient, more hunger, we tend to fight quick. And during this time of election, we don't want that to happen even from far. That's why I believe all these, public securities in the street, they are going to guarantee that the election goes in a very peaceful way, more than it should be. And it's happy for me to see that my government took this measure, because as African, during the election, most of the times countries are fighting. And I believe that my country doesn't want to show, this image of us, even though as African we tend to, but we are trying to make something different. And to be different, we need to have different measures in place. And this is what they done. And once again, I feel happy for that.
So most definitely, it is a commendable measure. But let's look at local government level now. Since that's one of your fortes, if you put it that way. Perception, a build up towards this election. Now, grassroots politics is one thing that every country tries to engage in, especially with citizens. What would you say? Are people sensitized enough at the local government level to actually know more about things like voter apathy, selling of votes, and so on in your area, and also by your analysis?
Okay, first of all, I would like to say that Angola doesn't have local government yet. The government has been working on everything in order to just implement this amazing process this year, 2022, but we have the general elections going on. So probably, I think the government will take time in order to give answer to this question, which is the local government implementation. And even though I don't think this is a reason that can stop me to talk about how this process has been, created, the vision the government has, for the implementation of this process that change people's lives. I believe that Angola is still searching, is deep searching about possibly implementation of local government in Angola, and especially how it can be done in a very, in a very good professional manner. We have been attending workshops. The government executives from different political parties, they have been attending workshops, international workshops, executive workshop with international, experts from South Africa, especially in Portugal, in order for us to understand exactly what is behind the local government. I remember I did participate in one organized by the Transformation Org Initiative in South Africa, and that was cute. That was beautiful. They teaching us how they done it and how are the better ways according to the level of population, the knowledge and history. And I believe it's a segment that we have to continue, especially after this general election. I think the government will have an answer for that. And we as analysts are here to give a proper to give a proper point of view concerning those public, policies and things related to that our government put in table. So we're here just to give the proper sense of this information and share with you. Thank you.
Okay. Now, Osvaldo, let's look at the track record of the incumbent administration. Now, do we say that people are so blinded by what did not happen that they did not actually see what the incumbent government has done? Or do we say that they haven't done enough? Because there's been a debate about whether or not Lorenzo has met up to standard. Some people say that he didn't do as promised, and some said he actually did his best. So what do you say about that?
All right. This is a soft situation, and in a better ways, we need to touch it carefully. I wouldn't say did or didn't do. That's a strong, sense of just, getting touched in situations that we need to touch carefully. But as an analyst, of course, I have to give my point of view, and that won't be different. The situation is in past, or with the previous, with the last president we had, we experienced a sense of not a freedom like it's the way it's supposed to be. But what people say, even the international community, what people clap for Lorenzo is the fact that Lorenzo came with this thing on him that people needs to be free, and we don't need to bind him for small things. Like, for example, we used to look at Brazil. The jokers, they used to joke with the president on TV, and that was normal. And other presidents, they were so soft, to a point that there is no need to fight and things like that. And Lorenzo brought this innovation in a diplomacy sector, and also in the, in the democracy level of the country. He brought this thing of open the social medias in the country. As long as you know exactly what you're saying, you know how to prove, and the evidence is for real, you can talk about it. But if you get caught, then you need to show that you were not, on a position to talk about that, then you're gonna take whatever comes bad from that. So he brought this to us. People are more free. They feel free. They feel a little bit of democracy. He brought that, and he was strong enough in order to make strong decisions in the government sector of Angola. I believe what he done is not something that just someone can do, to get into the government and touch there, touch here, touch there, and put it away you feel like is in order to give you answers for what you look for the development of the country. It was what he done. Wasn't easy. So that was a very experience we all had, that he came and he was powerful enough and smart enough to, touch dices and make the correct choices. And I believe it's just a matter of we understand, because we need to give it the time for the political parties running brief. So we had his first mandate, which was just going to end today, and we believe that the population are able to choose who is in better condition to continue running this beautiful country.
And what is it we hear about this election being a determining factor as it regards the Russia ties with the country? Now, we hear that the opposition's win will actually, or might actually, affect Angola-Russia ties. What do you have to say about that?
Angola and what, sorry?
Angola and Russia ties.
Okay.
There's been a
Well,
bilateral relationship, obviously, but now we're hearing that if the opposition wins, and that's the UNITA party, it might affect the Angola and Russia ties. What do you have to say about that?
I believe it can be true. It can be true because if another political party wins, of course, they need to touch all aspects of the country. They need to touch all aspects of the country, and this is a little bit their role, and they are in the position to do that. They need to look at a sector, different levels, and they need to understand first. After, they need to take actions that they believe is going to be better for the development and the growth of that particular sector. And with them, it will be different. Not just saying about sector, but in general. So to quickly answer this question, I believe, yeah, it will affect. Good or bad, I don't know, because we're talking about something that didn't happen yet. So we as analysts, we need to be smart enough in order to understand that this is our point of view, taking consideration that what we exactly analyzing. So we need to have enough evidence, facts to talk. And according to the situation, the way it is now, I believe, yes, all I can say from now, it can either for goodness, either to change for good or for bad, I don't know. But yeah, it's clearly that it will affect. It will.
All right, let's take a look at some of the updates as well regarding public transportation. Many have highlighted that there is very barely few transport systems working during this election day. What's your take on that? And since you've combed around earlier on before joining us, is that exactly what it is?
There is two different things that we need to analyze. First one is the fact that today, I don't know if he's talking about today as we do in the election process, or he's talking about like in general in the transport system of the country has less transport.
Today.
Today. Okay, today. Yes. Today, probably is the fact that during the campaign process, most of the public transport, all of them, they were used either to give answers, to what was going on in the city, because there were many people out until late. And that was not 1 day or 2 days, it was all the time until now, probably. So because of that, the public transport probably were working until late hours. But talking about today specifically, what can be the reason behind people are claiming that there are less transport? Because it's election. It's election. People want to walk, people want to feel free, they want to talk, they want to stay out until late, having and fun with the people and things like that. And that maybe can be the reason behind that, because many people they're going to vote, and after that they're going home. Many people they will stay out, and I believe that possibly can be the reason behind that. But I don't think that there is a measure that the government said or a rule that the government said concerning public transport. And then if it is, I don't think this is exactly how we can take this situation.
Okay, Osvaldo, we've seen how Kenya elections have turned out so far, and now there are fears that the vote counting rules that are being tweaked might affect the Angola elections and might shift the official results for days. And this is raising some agitations and might boil over to violence. What would you say about that?
Talking about rules. Yes, it can be, but most of the times rules that can just work, in a wrong direction, to how the election should be, so I can say, they are easily seen. We can easily see them, we can easily identify them, and we can see that there is something behind, that will say if he's in favor of who, if he's in favor of who. So I believe we are not just close to that. I'm not talking about Africa in general, because you just spoke about Kenya recently, but I'm talking about Angola specifically. The process of this election, they were just done one step to another, even though one...
All right, seem to have a little connectivity issue there. Well, hopefully, if you can join us back, Osvaldo, that will be good, and so we can actually go ahead and continue the conversation as well. Osvaldo, are you able to join back? Okay, all right.
Unfortunately, we don't have him, but well, we'll be taking sight and sound now from the Angola elections so you can see what is going on currently in the general elections.
Assim não dá, pá.
Posição. E depois. Sim, até ali, não é isso? Costa. Não, vai secar já.
$220 members of parliament and one president will be selected in what we know as one of the biggest elections to hold in Africa. Angola Decides 2022 is what we are bringing to you live, broadcasting from Lagos, Nigeria. This is News Central and we are Africa First. Right before we showed you sights and scenes of what's going on in different parts of Angola, we have been talking to a few guests who have joined us right from the early hours of 9 a.m. West African time. If you just tuned in, well, we are still taking a look at recent happenings. And still with us, joining us once more is Osvaldo Joao. He is the local government and public policies analyst all the way from Angola, Luanda to be precise. Let's take a look at this 220 members of parliament and a president to be selected today by just the thumb. Yes, and a lot of things are indeed ongoing as we speak. We've taken a look at the fact that the weather hasn't been that fair. We've also seen an increase right before this election kicked off today in the numbers of 13% that has risen up until 22%, especially for UNITA. And many already pointed fingers to say it is going to be an end of an era. What are your thoughts looking at all of these?
Just some hours ago, I was talking to someone, and our conversation was basically around that. We need to understand, the structure of our country, and especially the structure of our National Assembly, and how the public rules and how the rules, and public policies are made, and what are the needs they are created for, and what that they are there in order to give answers to whatever's going on, how they are being created, to summarize what I was trying to say. And we need to understand that either we have political party who has more, deputies than other in the parliament. We need to understand that wherever they are, selected to be there, there is a process for them to go through. And this is a rule, and the rule is made by their own government, who also made, this kind of situation in order for them to just show, how the government structure are founded, built, and created as well. So I guess there is not much to say about it, the way I think, because we need to work and we need to fight to change it. And this is the only way we can get closer to this reality that we all want. It's something that we need to talk less and put on work, because one elections after another, I believe that that is impossible. Any situation is stable, and we can just experience different reality in the next future and something like that.
All right, Osvaldo, when it comes to the discussion surrounding the country's elections, the economy still takes center stage. So we have talked extensively about the oil sector. We know that the Southern African country, is Africa's second biggest oil producer. But what do we say about the non-oil sector? Now, there's so many other sectors. How are they thriving, and what can the incoming president do differently or do to maintain the improvement in the economy?
We all know that Angola is a beautiful and rich country, and this is a fact. So what is the main problem? We have a lot of natural resources, rich ones and beautiful ones too. We have diamonds, we have wood, and we have oil, and we have many other natural resources that helps the country to maintain the good standard that we have around Africa and all over the world. It helps for us to just work with the little we have. I'm talking about taking consideration our knowledge and history in order just to preserve who we are and what we do and everything. So we have everything in order to be comfortable. But unfortunately, people claim, and many other Angolians, majority of people say that we don't get what we deserve because we're rich, the country is rich, the country does enough money in order to make us feel comfortable, but unfortunately we don't do. Well, I think you'll never find a citizen who is happy with the government they have. They always complain, and me, according to the education I had, I have to be the first one in order to ban this kind of things and put reality on the table. No citizens are satisfied with their government, so they always look for things to blame and everything. So I believe our government needs to pay more attention on the resources that brings more stability and security in the country, which is oil, diamond, wood, and many others. And also don't forget about the others, because it's about time. Today can be diamond time, and tomorrow can be wood time. And same way can be one of these two resources. The next day can be something else we don't expect. So we need to be working on everything in order to put everything in place and in order. I used to give an example when I'm talking to my friends. I was like, COVID came to the world, especially in Africa, to give answers, to the health system of many countries, what exactly they are doing. Because COVID came out of nothing, and we could see that many countries were not able, technically and in order to give answers to COVID in less than a month. So other countries did, because they were very acute concerning health, and their health system was strong, so they took it easy. I don't mean easy, but they knew what to do comparing to many African countries who gave answers very late. So at the end of the day, my question is, what exactly we doing? See, we can explore many other, sides of the country. We just stick our mind to something else. But I believe we have our technicians, and they are better in position to talk about this kind of situation.
All right. There are many fears, by the way, that the National Electoral Commission there in Angola is mostly controlled by the MPLA. And UNITA, members of UNITA are indeed afraid that there could be a little thing that might take place. What do you think these fears are indeed substantial?
Well, we need to see that. I used to say, even if UNITA was running the country, at the same time, MPLA would come with many issues against them. If APN was running the country, UNITA would come with issues on them. So I believe in politics has jealousy and has many other feelings that people do explore, and some of them experience often. We need to just understand the circumstances, what exactly going on in order for us to analyze. I wouldn't say, of course, but it's very natural that the political side, who's against the political side who's running the country, come, with situations like that. It happens, all the countries is like that. Whenever the political parties running the country is doing something, is doing that, I'm not in favor of any of them because I have none. I don't have any political party. I don't associate myself to this, but I'm just saying that it's natural. The other side comes with this kind of issue, or even worse than this. So the way I look at this situation, man, there is no any fact that any proven fact that can guarantee the veracity of this information. So whenever I come to things like that, just to listen, give the better treatment, but don't take it in consideration to a point where I can shape this information to others. And remember, this is international TV. I need to be careful and giving information and touch them topics. So I don't think there is much to talk about this concerning the fact that CNA is the institution who regulates, control, and supervise the election, has some situation in favor to that political party or the other one. Because I believe, even though if we say yes or no, at the end of the day, what can just correlate the quality of this information is a proven fact. Otherwise, I would be here one and everything like that.
Right, Osvaldo, very well understood. Now, one more question, and this is one question of interest. Now, let's look in retrospect. Let's look at Lorenzo's reforms in South Africa. Now, there was a time he came up with this anti-corruption reform, and as a matter of fact, he opened an investigation into that's the previous administration, the previous MPLA administration's books and their, corruption allegations. Now, people are trying to juxtapose that with his present position as to whether or not he has fully lived up to expectation, looking at how he started with probing the former administration, and now we're still talking about corruption in the country. So how would you say he has fared so far?
Well, that was something we never experienced. We never saw anything like that in the governance of the whole country. As far as I know. And this was one thing that many Angolans clapped him for. Doesn't matter if that worked or not worked, but what we were putting in consideration is the fact that came someone who at least was open to talk about it, to give, answers and better treatment when it comes to this situation. I remember the time I was still studying in South Africa, and I was meeting many people from other countries, Tanzania, Zambia, Togo, Nigeria, and so far, so on. And whenever they were come across to me to ask something, they were talking about straight corruption, like Angola is XBC concerning corruption. Like, is that true? And I was like, well, but why we need to be seen this way? And I believe it was part of his action in order just to let the international community and we as an Angolan to minimize the way, people look at us, and someone has to do something, and he done it. He came with this process in order just to, go after things, look for information in order to see, either in past, either in present, people who have stole the country and in a very necessary way. And thank God we caught some of them, sorry, not most, sorry, once again, some of them. Most of them are just in charge with the police and everything. Even if you don't know, even the older, son of the previous president of the republic has problems going on concerning situations like that. And the current president was the person who was there in order to bind this type of situation. So if he was able to do that and to put people under the wall, strong, names of this nation in this government, I believe he knew what he was doing. This is one thing that me particularly, I really do clap for, because even though I don't look at how it ended, how it is now, I look at how difficult it was for him to start with this initiative and have some goals.
All right, thank you so very much, Osvaldo, for that. You have really extensively given us insight into those questions. Thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you. All right, thank you.